Okay. I'm here today with one of my absolute favorite people in the world, one of my dearest friends, and a lady who I've had the privilege of not only working with, but watch work with people. And in my opinion, certainly one of the most gifted therapists I've been able to watch in some time. And I'm honored to have her with me. I'm talking with Dana Rideout, who is a licensed professional counselor, business consultant, and yoga teacher. We're going to talk a little bit with Dana today, who has a private practice in my hometown, Aiken, South Carolina, about some of the things she does to create magical sessions, kind of more from the somatic, the bodily oriented work she does. Thank you for talking with me today.
Well, it's an honor to be asked, especially by you, Paul, for sure.
Thank you, thank you. Now, just real quickly, I have briefly mentioned in the course, talking about the feeling of transformation as kind of an embodied, it's a felt sense. And it's an area that I kind of would like to explore a little bit with you about your work and your background. Is fairly varied, but one thing I want to kind of focus on is that you're coming from, as instead of being a yoga instructor who becomes a therapist, you're a psychotherapist who became a yoga instructor, now kind of blends some of those concepts together. So can you just tell me a little bit about how you approach when it's time to involve more body awareness and bodily movement and things like that in therapy in general?
You bet. So I have found that, gosh, I would say 9 sessions out of 10, we start from the very first day. And when I say that, I'm not putting them in down dog on the very first day, clearly, but it's because it's starting with the breathing. Very early on, we're talking about how to regulate emotions and the systems in our brain. We're making lots of references to Dan Siegel and his work, and probably pulling in some of Dr. Vanderkolk's work, because, as you know, the majority of my caseload is made up of folks that have had trauma and came to me because they wanted to explore trauma,
right.
And what that meant. So anyway, pretty early on, we're talking about breath work. And the way that I approach that is just, it's not with a lot of lecture. I'm not even talking to them about somatic experiencing. I haven't talked to them about anything magical or transformative. I just want them just to even start to pay attention to the breath, because as you well know, that's going to tell me a lot. Because a lot of times they're going to look at me and go, the way I'm breathing, and then we start from there. And then I can tell you true, I have yet to have anybody not want to explore that some more after I've shown them the difference between the chest breathing, and of course that connection to our fight or flight, and then the diaphragmatic connected to, you know, Marsha Linehan's A Wise Mind, or our, you know, our prefrontal cortex. So because already you can tell just in the way their jaw sits, in the way that they're looking at me, the softness in the angles, you can see in their chest, their throat, that something has shifted. And I can usually pinpoint it with them, and they can tell me something that's different just in that moment when they became aware of the breath. And so that's my hook.
Okay.
That's my hook. Do you want to explore that some more?
Yeah, I want to ask a little question about, you said that you've never had a client who's been resistant to that. And I just kind of want to throw out a little bit that, you know, you're my go-to person when it comes to working with law enforcement, first responders, because I consider you quite an expert in that. And I'm very impressed by your work. Sometimes those individuals that we perceive may be hesitant to, you know, and see that as touchy-feely, but you found that not always to be the case. And could you talk about tying that in from people maybe who might be a little, for lack of a better term, rigid, and how you can bring that out of them?
Because what I found with that particular population is that the vast majority of those individuals have had some experience with sports or martial arts, or even in their first responder training. So they have heard something about breathing and helping them with focus or helping them with stamina. Or even if they haven't, I will approach it. Most of them still are involved with some kind of physical activity. Their continued first responder training. They're certainly firefighters are doing a lot of training, you know, with the equipment. So I'll ask them, are you interested in, I see here on your write-up that you're having some issues with some concentration. Are you interested in going ahead and learning a tool that might help with that, plus stamina, that might even help with your workouts, that might help with some of the physical strains? And so right there, we've taken it away from any kind of mental health or mental, you know, whatever weakness that they think that they have. And I focus their attention in that regard. And then usually with a little bit of humor, and we've started to gain some rapport, you know, I said, oh, by the way, that's a little bit of yoga, just threw that in. And we're already, and by the way, we're already helping with your mental health, but, you know, and so they're already kind of doing that little double take, like, what are you doing? But usually it's all with fun. I have, like I said, truly, I have not had anyone leave the office and did not report afterwards that, you know, they were glad they stayed and that it really helped, and that they shared it. A lot of them have shared it with a colleague right off the bat. So
again, we've talked in this course I'm doing, we talked a lot about utilization, where we're using where the client is to meet them where they are. So instead of trying to, it's kind of like, and you're also someone who's very experienced in trauma-informed hypnosis and things like that, where you're trying to explain things to people to get them to buy into it. And that can be difficult with hypnosis. It can be difficult with yoga. But what you're doing is meeting the client where they are,
right,
and just kind of being flexible and using that to create the outcomes that you guys would have needed anyway.
And I really, that point was driven home actually in the training that I took with Dave Emerson, who is, he has the course on trauma-sensitive yoga that is, and he works with Bessel van der Kolk. And so when I took some training with him several years ago, he, in his program, he asks us to not use the word yoga as in yoga postures, yoga poses. He encourages us to use the word form, or have your body make this shape. And I've taken that and also used that a lot with my first responders too. Like, you know, let's see what your body feels like, what it would feel like with this particular breath, so that you get this focus, but it's with, and you're in your vest, and you're suited up. But I never once talk about, like, we're going to use this posture, or that, you know, with folks who have experienced trauma, with that particular population that Dave Emerson was focused on. He was focusing on adolescent girls who had come from sexual abuse. And so what you're trying to get away from is having them to posture or pose any more than they already have.
Right, right.
So I took that and I utilized that even with some of my really hardcore dyed-in-the-wool first responders. Like, they don't want to hear about posing and postures necessarily, that, you know. So we're talking about, I use the word tactical a lot, anywhere I can. That seems to help. So what would a tactical approach be with your breathing, with the way that you held yourself, that you stood? And they seem to really respond to that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, when you're doing these kind of things, whether it's your regular clients or the first responders or whoever, when they start really allowing themselves to open up to their bodies and things start changing for the good or bad, depending on who's ever making the distinction. How do you deal a lot of times when stuff does start to, for lack of a better term, unravel?
That's usually a good time for me to refer back to our first session together. Because when that information, when those emotions start to present themselves, and you know the look, when they trust you and they start looking at you like going, what the hell's going on, and am I going to come back from this? And that's usually when I put up a real soft hand and I said, let's push pause on that for a second, because I want to remind you of something. Do you remember our first session together, the very first time you walked into my office? And usually they'll say, yeah. And do you, because I've also pointed this out to them after the first session. Mm-hmm. And do you remember how you felt after you left that session? Well, yeah. And they'll say, you know, I did. I felt better. You know, I felt it wasn't as bad as what I thought. And I remember we laughed. And so I said, so when you leaned into that stuff, you had all the tools, all the equipment that you needed to get through that. I showed you one or two things, but you came in here already equipped. Isn't that right? And yeah. So what are the chances that's going to happen today? That you're going to leave here walking out, and we will have laughed, and you're going to feel like things are better organized, and that you're more proactive. Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I said, I do too. Mm-hmm. I do too. But it's your call. Do you want to lean into this some more, or do you need to take a break? Completely your control. Right. So that's probably a long-winded answer to your question, but it's referring them back to that, because again, that was when they came in with less resources, less confidence in themselves, in me, and yet, you know, there's your reference point for mm-hmm. them.
Yeah. So at the same time, we're asking the question about unraveling. When people are doing all of these things and it's leading to positive outcomes, since a bulk of what my work has lately been about is finding those transformative, magical concepts that we build on, what are some things that you found to be helpful in creating transformative sessions, not just body somatic oriented, but it can be that. But what are some things you just personally that you have found great efficacy when you apply?
So the environment gives us a bunch of cues. I'm able to, here in Aiken, I'm able to meet clients outside, because we have our beautiful woods and we have a couple of garden areas. So once we've kind of set that rapport up, built that trust level up, I actually conduct several sessions outdoors to be able to pull in more environmental cues to I want to use the word that you bring up in your book a lot is absolutely what I try to build into the sessions, and you absolutely validated that for me and then helped me expand on that. And the word is awe, A-W-E, to add awe to that. I want them to feel that sense of awe. I want them to be curious, mm-hmm. and then I want to add a little oomph to it, that awe. I want them just to be in awe of what their body's doing and how it's working and regulating. And a lot of times the environment can really give them the cues for that. Mm-hmm. I can do that in office, but it happens a lot easier outside. So an example maybe there, it was not too long ago that I met one of the officers out in the woods, because when I say out in the woods, it's not that remote, just for people listening to this. I mean, it's very safe. But
Kind
We
of like the
just took her.
beginning of a horror movie from the 80s, you know. She was a
It
blonde
was,
therapist. He was a unhinged cop. They met in the woods.
it wasn't, I'm not that naive. No, this is an existing client, we had met several sessions, and sitting in the office with he was getting some tools out of it, but I could tell that outdoors was really going to be his thing, and walking, moving was going to really help to keep this part of his brain online, while he was still grounded. So anyway, so we we hiked and we talked and we processed some things, and sure enough, I mean, it worked really well. But at the very end, I mean, it couldn't have been scripted any better. Um, as we were just getting ready to finish the hike, we oh gosh, it was maybe 8 or 9 feet in front of us, a buck started to come across the path. And he saw it first. And like a good cop, he threw his hand out to stop me, stop, because I was just steady, talking with, stopped. And we just stood in silence. And I don't think any of us breathed, by the way, but that was a good holding of the breath. And the buck looked at us, we looked at the buck. And then finally the buck he didn't even startle, really. He just kind of moseyed along. And it was just in that moment where my client and I just looked, because he could see the awe in my eyes, and I could see the awe in his, like, did you just, like two kids. And I should tell you that the reason why he was coming to me was severe depression. And to the point where when he first came to see me, I was pretty concerned. So this was really amazing to see in 4 sessions, and now we're in the 5th one, and his eyes just like he was 4 years old, So, of course, that was gold, and we talked about how he felt right in that moment. And he didn't use the word awe. I did, but he didn't. He said, he did recall, he said, I felt like a kid. And I said, yeah. And I said, tell me some more about that feeling. And he felt happy. And I said, just 5 weeks ago, you weren't sure you wanted to be here. So tell me some more about that. And so he started to do that compare and contrast. Well, then later we looked it up. And again, I can't say enough, like, I don't know that I would have felt the freedom to do this, permission, I should say, to do this without our talks about magical sessions. I immediately pulled up my phone and I looked up spirit animals. And we talked about the spirit animals, and when we looked at the buck, it talked about clarity, it talked about intuition. Well, he didn't know what intuition meant. So we had a whole conversation about intuition, and he recognized that as a strength of his, but he didn't know that he could even have that. I mean, it was just, I'm probably telling you too much, but you can, like, I'm just still so excited about that experience, and to have it, so that the magic of that so fully validated. So he still goes out to the woods. And I will tell you, he had not been out to the woods, and he's lived here for several years. He had never been out there until we met out there.
So it's making a space for everything. It kind of, as you were saying that, it reminded me of one of my heroes, Alejandro Jodorowski, who is a great filmmaker and psychotherapist, and he reads tarot as part of his thing. And he always talks about his tarot readings. Everything is open. If I'm pulling a card out and a bird flies by, that is part of the therapy. If some stranger in the hallway coughs, that's part of the therapy, and which is basically utilization. But you incorporated. I mean, it would have been easy to just go, "Hey, that was great. That was a big deer," and you just move on. And you not only recognized the awe, but then you just grabbed hold of it and just milked it for all it's worth to get different possibilities going on in his brain. So I think that was just brilliant.
Oh, it was so, and again, the outdoors, Just, I mean, I have several stories like that it's just amazing, and where I'm facilitating it, but I don't feel like I'm leading the work.
Right.
So it's just as magical for me, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah.
I think so. The feeling I get is definitely magical. Of course, my focus is on the client, and I want them to feel that, but I'm feeling it, and so I'm just energized with it too. I was like, oh my God. But if I could share one more story in office,
please.
I have a client who is adopted and did not have a very good experience with, in particular, her father. And so she had a couple of letters, some kind of writing. It wasn't a letter to her, but some of his handwriting. I will just leave it at that. And it was just the energy of having his handwriting in her home it was just too dark. She had held on to it for years, thinking that she was obligated to do so, but she just didn't have that kind of relationship with her father like that. And so she decided that she wanted to go ahead and get rid of it. Well, we made it a ceremony because she had some, I wouldn't say reluctance, but she didn't want it just to be a trash thing either. She wasn't. So we made it into a ceremony, including me bringing my shredder in. This was all with her permission. And so she was gonna put it in the shredder, and yeah, and then we were gonna do something clever with the little bits and pieces. I don't recall that part of it because when she, I am dreadful with any kind of equipment. Like the fact that we can even do this, that I've got it, is really amazing, quite frankly. I'm in awe that I could even do this through Zoom. So I bring the shredder in and it is on, but what I didn't know was that it was on reverse. So she is steady trying to stick that in the shredder, and it's steady spitting it back out. So the letter wouldn't go down. And she's getting really upset because she's trying to get this letter to go in. It won't go. I have no idea why it won't work until finally she's the one. She said, my dad won't leave. My dad won't leave. And she started to give up. And I said, I think we need to stay with this. I think we need to stay with this. So let's work through this together, because that's what you got me for. So let's see what we can figure out. And then we figured out, I simply just had the little knob. I just had to slide it over. We gathered what we could, and then we put it through. And I said at that point, I said, no wonder you had a difficult time in that relationship. I said, I'm glad I got to witness that. I said, it made me kind of, so there was that shared experience of not being able to get rid of dad.
Right. Yeah.
All because I bumbled the shredder. But it really, and to this day, we just, now though, what's lovely is that she passes by that shredder in my workspace. And now though, it's actually, we laugh. Let's be clear, she laughs.
Yeah.
She laughs. When she thinks about her dad, she laughs about how goofy that was, and then was validated that he was hard to get rid of.
Yeah, changed her relationship to her father by that new experience. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, as we kind of slowly wrap this up, I would like you to just kind of tell me, for you, when you are in the moment of doing your therapy, and you've already kind of alluded to this, do you feel when a magical moment is about to happen? Do you feel it? Not just think it, but do you have a body awareness of this is it? Or is yours just kind of, you get a thought, okay, I need to pay attention to this, using your words. How does that work for you?
So I would say the majority of the time when that moment is getting ready to happen, I feel it like down in my gut. And I'm like, um, I'm really like a kid at Christmas. And I find that I have to explain my affect to them, because usually what, the client has just revealed something, or something they feel like is not going right, or it's startling, like with the shredder. Um, and then it's a disconnect really when they see me like leaning in, and I'm starting to even kind of a little bit like smile a little bit, and then so I have to explain. I learned that early on too, because otherwise you can creep them out real quick. But I said, I know what you're seeing here looks like I'm happy, and what I'm telling you is I really want to hear more about because you are giving me gold. So stick with that, because you have no idea what's getting ready to happen here, kiddo, but it's gonna be cool as crap. So tell me some more. And so they're like, okay, crazy lady. So and then you just take all of that information, and you toss out back that glitter, that gold, that magic. Look, and then look what you just did. Look what just happened. Look how the environment just took care of you. Look how connected you are. And so I feel that starting to bubble. But I'm always like, I still think I still have that little bit of, I don't want to say, it's not pessimism, probably a little cynicism. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, no, surely is this going to happen the way I think it's getting ready? No, that's too good. That's too good. Oh my God, this is really about to open up. This is going to be one of those sessions I get to tell Paul about.
Well, when did you learn to trust yourself to get, when you got that, to keep going? Yesterday?
Yesterday.
It's like the old Navy SEAL during Hell Week. They say the only easy day was yesterday. So.
Yeah. No, let me be clear. No, I love what I do. I love it. And but what is that called? Imposter syndrome or imposter fit? Oh, that's every day. I'm sure I still have, like, the gig's gonna be up any day now, and somebody's gonna find me out. But until then, I'm gonna have a great time because I don't do anything else.
Yeah.
So in all honesty, I really it feels right. I like you. I mean, I read, I listen to folks. I have good mentors, and that's about all I know to do. And people keep coming back, and people keep coming back. I've been doing this long enough now that they come back and they're feeling better, or they're just coming in for a tune-up. So I guess that just kind of lets me know just to kind of keep doing what I'm doing. And I have some confidence in that, and I have enough confidence in what I do to guide. But I think if there comes a day where I'm not questioning myself at some level, then I'm really in trouble. Don't you think?
Well, sure, because we got to have some critical factor. We can't, because if we go down the road to, I trust absolutely everything that's coming out. There can be some amazingly beautiful outcomes, but I think there's also, everything I found is that balance, that tightrope we walk. Do I trust myself enough to go so far? And sometimes we do need to just take that extra step that's really frightening, and other times we have to differentiate. I think this is a good place to not get too creative, not do sometimes, if you're eating an ice cream cake, technically you really don't need a cherry on top to enjoy it. So it's nice to have it, but.
And you bring up a really good point too, is that
cherry cake? Yeah, a cake,
yeah.
ice cream cake.
It's that, I want to be, full transparency, have there been times where I've stepped out a little too soon to try to get this magical moment going, or maybe it happened, but just the client, but I saw, but maybe the client did it. I don't know, but I want to be really clear to people watching this. it hasn't always happened. It happens. It happens a lot when you go into it with your own curiosity, and if you're checking in with your ego, and you really like what you do. It really does. However, but stumbling or maybe push something that maybe it was just a little too soon, or I read more into it. You know, if it'd been my session, it would have been magical, but it was theirs, and so it wasn't. That's happened. So I want to be really clear, but it doesn't mean anything went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my timing was a little bit off, or maybe more likely what we do is we end up pulling from that later on, or I ask for feedback. You know, it's a great time to ask for feedback. Like, you know, here's what I was feeling. I felt like maybe I was pushing that a little bit too soon, and I would love to hear from you. What would you like some more of for me, or less of for me, so that I can fine tune this better for you? And of course, we know, I mean, clients really respect that. So I guess in essence, those can become magical moments too, but it doesn't always quite go sparkly like what I like.
Right. Well, that is life, and it's part of growth. Well, you've given me a lot of really fascinating ways to look at things, and I'm hoping that people who are watching this get out not only from our interaction, your enthusiasm, your openness, and your humility, which I think if you can have those three things in place to be any kind of therapist, particularly a psychotherapist, the theories and techniques just fall into where they need to. But having that openness, that enthusiasm and humility, I think is really important. Can you please let everyone know the best place to find you and your work?
So I have a website, and it's simply danarideout.com. And that'll give you most of the information, more than you could possibly want. Just no cherry on top, but
Yeah. And again, for those watching, again, Dana's an absolutely wonderful therapist, and she also has consulted with businesses on mindful approaches to team building. She is an expert, as far as I'm concerned, on trauma work, and has been very trained in trauma-informed hypnosis, hypnotherapy. So she offers a lot of information. I really appreciate you talking to me today, because I know how busy you are, and it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Paul, very, very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.